I was 72 years old when I realized something I never thought I would have to admit. I was sitting across from my husband at the dinner table. We had been married for more than 50 years, the kind of marriage people admire from the outside. We raised children together, built a home together, survived hard times together. That evening, I told him about a doctor's appointment I had earlier that day. I was nervous about the results and hoped he would ask a question or offer a few comforting words. Instead, he nodded without looking up from his phone. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at him. Then I quietly finished my meal and went into the bedroom. I didn't cry because of what happened that night. I cried because I suddenly realized how many years I had felt unseen. The truth is, I didn't stop loving my husband in one dramatic moment. There was no affair, no betrayal, no terrible argument. What happened was much quieter than that. Year after year, little disappointments piled up. Conversations became shorter. Affection became rarer. Appreciation slowly disappeared. Somewhere along the way, the man I once felt deeply connected to became someone I simply lived beside. And I know I'm not the only woman who has felt this. Many wives over 60 carry the same sadness in silence. They don't hate their husbands. They don't want revenge. They're simply exhausted from feeling invisible. Today, I want to talk honestly about why so many women begin to fall out of love later in life, and why it happens more often than most people realize. People often assume that women stop loving their husbands because of one major event, an affair, a betrayal, a painful argument that changes everything. But in most long marriages, that isn't what happens. Love rarely dies in a single day. It fades slowly, almost invisibly, through hundreds of small moments that seem unimportant at the time. A forgotten promise, a conversation that never really happened, a feeling that your thoughts no longer matter, a sense that you're giving far more than you're receiving. Looking back, I can't point to one specific day when my feelings changed. If someone had asked me 20 years ago whether I loved my husband, I would have answered without hesitation. 10 years ago, I probably would have said the same thing. But somewhere between those years, something shifted. Not all at once, little by little. I remember telling him about a book I was reading and realizing halfway through the conversation that he wasn't listening. I remember celebrating my birthday and feeling like he had put more thought into paying the electric bill than into spending time with me. I remember lying awake at night worried about our future and knowing he had no idea what was weighing on my heart. None of those moments were devastating by themselves. The problem was that they kept happening. One disappointment is easy to forgive. 1,000 disappointments create distance. And distance, if left alone long enough, becomes loneliness. Many women over 60 know exactly what I'm talking about. They sit beside their husbands every day, yet they feel completely alone. From the outside, the marriage appears stable. There are no dramatic fights, no threats of divorce, no obvious signs of trouble. But inside, something important has been disappearing. The emotional connection that once held everything together. The saddest part is that most women don't stop loving because they want to. They stop loving because they become exhausted. Exhausted from hoping, waiting, explaining, and trying. And when hope slowly disappears, love often begins to disappear with it. That is how many marriages change, not with a storm, but with a silence that grows louder year after year. One of the hardest truths many women face after 60 is this. They no longer feel like a wife. They feel like a caregiver. For years, I didn't notice the change. It happened so gradually that I accepted it as part of marriage. I reminded my husband about doctor's appointments. I organized our finances. I kept track of medications. I remembered birthdays, family events, repairs around the house, and all the little details that kept our lives running smoothly. At first, I didn't mind. That's what partners do for each other, right? But as the years passed, I realized something uncomfortable. The responsibilities kept growing, while the help I received seemed to shrink. If I didn't remember something, it often didn't happen. If I didn't plan it, it often wasn't done. If I didn't worry about it, nobody did. The weight of carrying everything became exhausting. Many women my age tell similar stories. They spend their days managing schedules, solving problems, making appointments, handling paperwork, and anticipating needs before anyone else even notices them. Even after retirement, the mental workload never seems to end. What makes it painful isn't the work itself. It's the feeling that nobody sees it. Imagine carrying a heavy box every day for decades, while everyone around you acts as if your hands are empty. Eventually, resentment begins to grow, not because the woman wants to be angry, but because she feels alone in the responsibility. I remember a conversation with a friend who had been married for 54 years. She laughed sadly and said, "I don't have a husband anymore. I have another person to take care of." We both laughed, but neither of us thought it was funny. The difficult reality is that romantic feelings struggle to survive when one partner feels like a parent. It's hard to feel excitement, attraction, or emotional closeness when you're constantly reminding someone to take medication, pay attention to important details, or help with everyday responsibilities. Over time, many women stop seeing their husbands as equal partners. They begin seeing them as another obligation. And once that shift happens, something important changes inside the relationship. The woman becomes less affectionate, less hopeful, less emotionally invested. Not because she wants to hurt her husband, but because she's tired, very tired. The greatest danger isn't when a wife complains. It's when she stops complaining altogether, because often that means she has stopped believing anything will ever change. And when a woman reaches that point, the emotional distance between husband and wife can become greater than either of them realizes. Another reason many wives begin to lose their emotional connection after 60 is surprisingly simple. They no longer feel seen. Not physically seen, emotionally seen. There was a time when my husband noticed everything. He could tell when I was worried before I said a word. He noticed when I changed my hairstyle. He asked about my day. He remembered little things I mentioned in passing. Those moments made me feel important. They made me feel loved. But somewhere over the years, that attention slowly disappeared. It wasn't intentional. At least, I don't think it was. Life became busy. Careers demanded attention. Children needed support. Bills had to be paid. Responsibilities piled up. And before we knew it, years had gone by. But after retirement, something became painfully clear. The distractions were gone, yet the attention never returned. I remember a period when I was struggling with insomnia. Night after night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. I was exhausted, anxious, and emotionally drained. For weeks, my husband never asked if something was wrong. Not because he was cruel, because he simply didn't notice. That realization hurt more than I expected. Many women reach a point where they feel invisible inside their own marriage. They prepare meals, solve problems, support family members, and continue giving their energy to everyone around them. Yet they rarely feel truly acknowledged. What they want is often very simple. A question, a conversation, a moment of genuine curiosity. Someone who looks into their eyes and says, "You seem different today. Are you okay?" The absence of those small moments creates a quiet loneliness that is difficult to explain. A woman does not need constant praise. She does not expect perfection, but she wants to know that her presence still matters, that someone notices when she is happy, that someone notices when she is hurting, that someone still cares about who she is becoming. When that feeling disappears, emotional distance begins to grow. And the saddest part is that many husbands never realize it's happening. They believe everything is fine because there are no arguments, no dramatic confrontations, no threats to leave. Meanwhile, the woman is slowly withdrawing into herself, not because she wants to punish him, but because she has spent too many years feeling unseen. And when a person feels invisible long enough, they eventually stop expecting to be noticed at all. Retirement is supposed to be one of the happiest chapters of life. For decades, many couples dream about it. No more alarm clocks, no more stressful commutes, no more rushing through the day, just freedom, peace, and finally having time for each other. That was what I imagined too. I thought that when my husband retired, we would spend more time talking, traveling, and enjoying the years we had worked so hard to reach. But reality looked very different. Instead of feeling closer, I began feeling more trapped. For most of our marriage, work created a natural balance. We each had our routines, responsibilities, and separate experiences. At the end of the day, we had something new to share with each other. Then, retirement arrived. Suddenly, we were together almost every hour of every day. At first, it felt wonderful. Then, I started noticing something. My husband had spent decades building a career, but he had never built a life outside of work. He had few hobbies, few close friendships, very little that truly belonged to him beyond his job. When that role disappeared, he seemed lost. Without realizing it, he began depending on me to fill the empty space. He wanted to know what I was doing, where I was going, what my plans were. He expected us to spend nearly all of our time together. Some women might think that sounds romantic, but after a while it felt exhausting. I wasn't his wife anymore. I felt like I had become his entire world, and that's a heavy responsibility for anyone to carry. The truth is that many women reach retirement hoping to discover more freedom. They want time for friends, hobbies, volunteering, travel, reading, or simply enjoying a quiet afternoon alone. But when a husband has no interests of his own, that freedom can quickly disappear. Instead of gaining independence, the wife feels like she has acquired a new full-time responsibility. What makes this situation so difficult is that neither person intends harm. The husband is often lonely. The wife is often overwhelmed. Both are struggling, but in different ways. And if those feelings are never discussed, resentment begins to grow. Because physical closeness does not automatically create emotional closeness. In fact, being together constantly can sometimes expose how disconnected two people have become. Retirement doesn't create marriage problems. It reveals the ones that were already there. And for many couples, that realization can be both painful and impossible to ignore. One of the most difficult things to talk about is what happens when a wife continues growing, but her husband does not. Growth doesn't stop when we turn 60. In many ways, it becomes even more important. After decades of raising children, building careers, caring for parents, and meeting everyone else's needs, many women finally reach a stage of life where they begin asking deeper questions. Who am I now? What do I want from the years I have left? What experiences have I been postponing? I remember feeling this shift myself. In my late 60s, I became curious about things I had never made time for before. I wanted to read more books. I wanted to travel to places I had only seen in magazines. I wanted to attend community events, meet new people, and learn skills that had nothing to do with my responsibilities as a wife or mother. For the first time in years, I felt excited about the future. But my husband seemed completely uninterested. Whenever I suggested trying something new, his response was almost always the same. Why bother? We're too old for that. What's the point? At first, I tried to encourage him. I invited him to join me. I shared my ideas. I talked about places I wanted to visit. activities I wanted to try, dreams I still hoped to fulfill. But over time, I noticed something. I was moving forward. He was standing still, and the distance between us grew larger every year. Many women experience the same thing. They discover new passions, new friendships, and new goals. They become more confident and more curious about life. Meanwhile, their husbands remain trapped in routines that haven't changed in decades. The problem isn't that couples need identical interests. Healthy marriages have always included differences. The problem begins when one person remains open to growth while the other rejects it entirely. Eventually, conversations become repetitive. Shared experiences become rare. The relationship starts feeling less like a partnership and more like two separate lives happening under the same roof. What hurts most is not the disagreement, it's the loneliness. The feeling that the person who once walked beside you no longer wants to explore the future with you. Many husbands believe their wives are pulling away because they have changed. But often, the opposite is true. The wife is finally becoming more fully herself, and she is grieving the fact that her partner is no longer willing to grow alongside her. Love needs movement. It needs curiosity. It needs two people who are still interested in life and in each other. When one person continues evolving while the other refuses to move, the emotional gap becomes harder and harder to bridge. And eventually, some wives stop feeling like they are sharing a journey. They feel like they are walking alone. Another reason many wives begin to lose their emotional connection after 60 is the gradual disappearance of intimacy. And I'm not just talking about sex. In fact, for many women, emotional intimacy matters even more. It's the small things, holding hands while walking, a hug that lasts a few seconds longer, sitting together at the end of the day and sharing thoughts, a gentle touch on the shoulder, a warm smile across the room, the feeling that someone still sees you as special. Over the years, many couples stop doing these things without even realizing it. Life becomes routine. Conversations become practical. The relationship becomes focused on schedules, bills, health concerns, and family obligations. Slowly, the romance that once connected them begins to fade into the background. I remember a moment that made me realize how much had changed. My husband and I were sitting in the living room one evening. The television was on. We had spent almost 3 hours in the same room, yet we had barely spoken. No conversation, no laughter, no affection, just two people sharing a space. As I sat there, I thought to myself, when did we become roommates? That question stayed with me for a long time. Many women know exactly what that feels like. The marriage still exists. The routine still exists. The shared history still exists. But the emotional warmth that once made the relationship feel alive has slowly disappeared. What makes this especially painful is that women often don't expect grand romantic gestures. They don't need expensive gifts. They don't need dramatic declarations of love. Most simply want to feel connected, to feel desired, to feel valued, to feel close to the person they have spent decades loving. Without that connection, loneliness can exist even inside a marriage. In fact, some of the loneliest people in the world are not those who live alone. They are those who live beside someone who no longer reaches for them emotionally. Love is not sustained by history alone. It is sustained by daily acts of connection. And when those acts disappear year after year, many wives begin to wonder whether the love is gone as well. That question often becomes the beginning of a much deeper emotional withdrawal. The most heartbreaking moment in many long marriages is not when a wife becomes angry. It's when she stops trying. Most people imagine that the breaking point comes during a huge argument. They picture slammed doors, harsh words, or dramatic confrontations, but that's rarely how it happens. For years, Many women fight for the relationship. They explain their feelings. They ask for more attention. They try to start conversations. They express their loneliness. They hope their husbands will finally understand. I did all of those things. There were times when I cried. Times when I tried to explain why I felt distant. Times when I told my husband exactly what I needed. Not perfection. Not grand gestures. Just a little more presence. A little more effort. A little more understanding. But after enough disappointments, something inside me changed. I stopped bringing things up. I stopped asking for deeper conversations. I stopped expecting him to notice when I was hurting. From the outside, it probably looked like our marriage had become more peaceful. There were fewer disagreements, less tension, less conflict. But the truth was far more painful. I wasn't at peace. I was giving up. And many husbands misunderstand this stage completely. When a wife stops complaining, he often thinks the problem has disappeared. He thinks things are finally better. What he doesn't realize is that she may have simply stopped believing her words matter. That's why emotional withdrawal is so dangerous. It happens quietly. There is no announcement, no dramatic scene, just a gradual closing of the heart. The wife begins investing her energy elsewhere into friends, hobbies, grandchildren, volunteering, or simply creating a life that no longer depends on emotional support from her husband. She may still stay in the marriage. She may still be kind. She may still fulfill her responsibilities. But emotionally, she is no longer standing in the same place. The saddest truth is that by the time many husbands notice the distance, it has already been growing for years. And that is why the moment a wife becomes silent is often far more serious than the moment she becomes angry. Because anger still carries hope. Silence often means that hope is beginning to disappear. As I look back on more than 50 years of marriage, I've come to understand something important. Most wives do not stop loving their husbands because of one terrible mistake. They stop loving because of years of feeling unseen, unheard, and unappreciated. The distance doesn't appear overnight. It grows through small moments that seem insignificant at the time, conversations that never happen, feelings that are dismissed, efforts that go unnoticed, and affection that slowly disappears. The good news is that it doesn't have to end this way. No matter how long you've been married, it's never too late to start paying attention again. A sincere conversation, a thoughtful question, a simple thank you. Sometimes the smallest actions can begin healing the deepest wounds. If you're a husband watching this, take a moment today to truly see your wife. Listen to her. Ask how she's feeling. Let her know she still matters. And if you're a wife who recognizes yourself in this story, please know that you're not alone. Your feelings are real, and they deserve to be acknowledged. Thank you for spending these moments with me. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment with the number 1 below. I read every comment. And don't forget to subscribe for more conversations about relationships, aging, and finding meaning in the years ahead. Until next time, take care of yourself and of the people you love.